I really feel extremely lucky that I was able to sequence the work on this FZR restoration, so I was going to be inside today. And it has made me a bigger believer in trying to plan the workout. So on these bitter cold days, and it has really been cold lately, and in this really cold weather, I like to get out here early in the morning, flip the battery chargers, look around, make sure a mouse didn't eat any of the motorcycle tires, and get back inside and have coffee. And we were really lucky that we scheduled the work we did when we did, and we got all that painting done, because it would have been brutal to try to get something painted today. And that's why I try to share my experiences with all of the things I do to sequence work, so that I get the most done in the least amount of time for the least amount of money, and be able to drink the most coffee. And now for the best part of every morning, getting the hell out of this garage. I think it was 10 degrees out here or something before. Oh. And if this doesn't make you, you're sitting in sunny Florida now, this should cool you right off. It actually was under 10 degrees this morning. So as I look over the work that's still in the shop, Steve, of course, is still pretty busy and doing his thing. So when he gets a chance, I'm sure he's looking forward to putting this together, and I'm looking forward to seeing some pictures of it all put together. One of the nicest parts of this whole winter's restoration is the way this Ninja came out for Steve. And I'm sure he's just as happy, maybe he's even happier than I am about it. Now our project, every morning I have to come down and I have to make a decision. And based on the weather, based on whatever, and try to figure out how I can use this day productively. A lot of our parts are already buffed out. We're actually coming down a home stretch here. We have the two big parts, which I've of course saved for last. They've been hanging under a heating vent. And as I look around, I guess the fairing is the next thing to go. And for me, what's always important at the end of a job is just not to get impatient and try to take any shortcuts. I don't want any shortcuts on this. Basically, if I had this all buffed out and ready to put the bike back together, I wouldn't put it together anyway. It's too cold outside. So there's really no reason to skimp on the amount of time. Now, this is a funny thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. That I remember reading somewhere that the Italians made cars as if time didn't exist. And in other words, they took their time. Well, that's how I feel about my restorations. If you've got to keep track of the hours, it's probably not worth doing. So after having conversed with my boss and gotten a list of what today's obligations are, 'cause every day we have something going on here, I realized today I'll have a short session, but I can get some of this sanded out. I don't know how much. This is ready for the 2500 sanding. And once that's done, it'll be ready for the buffing. And then the final thing is going to be putting the headlights in and installing that, getting the windshield on. But getting the buffing, we're at a watershed. We're actually at a good watershed now. This paint should sand out easily, beautifully. It's plenty dry. It's been sitting under a heating vent. Should sand out beautifully. So for this job, we're going to use 2500. This is Mirka sandpaper, but we've tried others that work pretty much just as well. First thing that I want to do, I want to do a little test of the paint. Pick a spot. It's really irrelevant where it is, since we have this all flattened out and the stripes are not even showing anymore. So I'll take any little spot, just do a little test. Again, when I know I have a whole day for it, I kind of pick my poison. I try to pick big jobs. And when I know I only have, in case today, I probably only have 2 or 3 hours. We have extra babysitting. There's a lot of things going on in our family, our illustrious family. But once I see that I can sand this without any issues, I get pretty excited, because if I can get this part done today and all sanded out, then the buffing part of it is relatively easy, because to me, it's a lot more work to sand it than to buff it. But I'm going back in this direction, trying to make as many different sandpaper changes as I can. And I just take a little look at how it's coming out. Let me show it. Flat as a pancake. Wow. So now, just to get the picture, of course, we've started with, this is the final coat of clear. We want to flat sand it, block sand it. You can call it whatever you want. Get rid of any orange peel, any dust, anything that's in that paint. And then, of course, the last step, touch up if we have any problems, any little spots that we missed or whatever. Now, again, the goal is always kind of divide it up into spots. We've got one spot done. Be very careful around the edges, just touch it. Try to move the sandpaper in different directions. And the first time you block sand something out, just be, as we're doing now, be as fussy as possible. I would not want to be doing this on a day that I was itching to go for a motorcycle ride or something else. If I was looking to keep track of time, in our case, we're into the 4th month of this by a couple of days, and the odds are good it's going to go on a couple more months. I don't know. And if I knew, half of the fun would be gone. Because the real adventure is when you don't know where you're going. That's the real adventure of life. Be Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids. You don't know if you're going to get arrested or move to Argentina. Totally irrational comments. Anyway, I'm just trying to show this in real time a little bit as I do one little section, because, and especially when other people have been over here at the shop and trying to learn this skill, the one thing they don't do enough of is dry the part off and hold it up and look for issues. Because if we're done, if it's flat, I'm done. If there's moon craters, then I got to take my little moon crater stick, and I see I got a couple of moon craters here. But basically, the paint is dry enough. Look at this; it's going to tip over. The paint is dry enough now that getting the moon craters out should be no big deal at all. But I've started here. I'll move up. I'll move out here. And that's another thing that's hard to explain to people, because people want to just go like they're at a car wash. And then it gets frustrating. You don't see any real results. If I get one section at a time done, then I'm really happy and the job seems to move right along. I'm trying to hold this in such a way that I can candle it and I can see the moon craters. Right there, you can see one right there. Right, it's just shining right in about the middle of the screen. Now, what that means is I've got a little divot there. That the choices would be to sand it by hand. But our little sanding stick, if I wrap this around a new piece of sandpaper, it's going to allow me to get that moon crater out very quickly. A lot quicker than sanding by hand. Using one of these beauty supply sticks, they're flexible, they're inexpensive, and if I take one corner of the piece of sandpaper, I'll then go to the next corner, to the next corner, the next corner, then I'll do this like a clock. So I'll actually get 8 fresh cuts on this. And this will, in a matter, I want to see how long this is going to take. I see the moon crater is right here. Change the direction a little bit. Back and forth, up and down, go around in circles. Just don't grind away and dig a ditch. And it's usually, even with 2500, 3000, or if you're willing to do a lot more buffing, you can just use 2000. It'll cut a lot quicker. But I found a good compromise is, this is the compromise, is 2500 on cured paint. It's a week old. Maybe different because the paint is softer when it's new. And then that product, that 4C compound that we've been using, is just magic. That's magic stuff. Okay, moon crater gone. Now as I go along this part, every time I find a defect, I want to get each section perfect before I move on to the next section. So now, as this is progressing, this is totally sanded out. It's about as defect-free as I can possibly make it. Now, I thought just an easy thing to do is going to be to sand the black stripe. That'll be my separation here, and then divide this up maybe into 4. one section at a time, but once it's flat like that, when the part is really perfectly prepared like that, the buffing part of it goes beautifully. And anytime I get bored doing this kind of work, I just take a little quick walk over to the my little project bench to remind me that it's always worth the extra effort to do this right. Always worth it to get the sanding perfect before the buffing. Now, as I'm getting some of the progress on this, I can see this really paid off to let this dry up by those heating vents a couple extra days. And you really don't see it on the video, but if you were here in real life, you can feel that the sandpaper is cutting now. It's no drag on it. And that's such a big advantage. When you're going to do a couple, 2 or 3 hours of this sanding, anything you can do to make it easy on yourself. Repeat over and over again, as the late George Venturini used to say to me. We were mixing concrete and pouring a porch at his daughter's house, and he saw that I was not good at mixing concrete, and he says, don't invent any ways of making it harder. The work is hard enough as it is. And God bless you, George. I still remember that. George is the one who helped me dig the pond along with my son, Craig, and I think of him often. Anyway, we're going to get this whole thing done here. I anticipate I'll get all the sanding done today, but not the buffing based on how the day is playing out. But the paint is sanding beautifully. And when it does, it's a joy to do this kind of work. And when the paint isn't your friend, oh, yeah, it's just... Now the hard part is the picking away and getting rid of any little dust, any little moon crater, anything in there. And you can see there's still a few. That's where that little moon crater stick comes in handy. And then it's off to the... It's amazing how... You would think if you look at this, it's never going to be shiny again. As soon as you hit that with buffing compound, it's amazing. This is a good view right here. You can see the shiny side, unsanded. And I know people that have tried, maybe with some success even, to take a car and just buff over the paint without block sanding it. I don't know. On a motorcycle, I don't think that's even worth trying. Well, I've got the other side done. Got the black stripe done. Progress is pretty good, but I don't know, that's probably about half of the way through. These side panels are very complex shapes, so I want to be very careful with the sides. And then I've got that part that's underneath to do. So, but the whole key to everything, don't try to rush it. Now this is a spot that will not be overly visible, but you still want to get it buffed out. I don't want to have it. Just want to get, and especially where the stripe is. Now I've seen a lot of people that, like, they'll say, you're painting something, oh, nobody will see that. Well, sometimes that's true, but sometimes it isn't. And sometimes you don't put a good finish on something and you think nobody's going to see it, and that. And later you're riding a bike around and you're disappointed you didn't spend that extra little bit of time. Now this is a little bit of extra time. And also getting these side pieces are so complex. I want to really take my time and get them. There's no sand throughs. Now this is one of the parts that's really tricky to get at. And I was trying to hold this part in my lap and trying to, well, who knows what. What would really be nice if you had that pet octopus now that could hold this. But as always, there's always a way. If there's a will, there's a way. You always figure out how to do it. Now getting these things all flat sanded out. I may get this part done today. It looks like I'm going to get it done, but I'll be very, and I mean very happy. I always sleep better at night when these parts are all sanded out. And this one is a big one because of all the complex shapes and sizes. It just winds up taking a long time to get that done. Coming down the home stretch on this, I definitely will get this finished sanded before the baby gets here. Always a free bonus. Now, it's always in my advantage to get to a where the part is totally sanded, and next time I get to do a session, this part will be ready to buff out. And boy, then the only thing left we have are the side panels, and wow. But the problem is, and I always think this, I always underestimate at the end of a job how many little details there are. And at this one, I have a lot of little details, including I wanted to paint the wheels, and I have to make that decision yet. That's sanded right out beautifully. When the paint is cured and everything just went so nice on this whole paint job. I've had so many things go right and so many things in my favor, and then just beating the hell out of this cold weather really made me happy. That was a bonus. Boy, it's a good feeling. We're coming down the home stretch here. Part's looking great. On this part, we have no touch-ups at all. That's rare. But, boy, we are really reaching a watershed every day here with these parts. And boy, all I could wish for is that the weather would warm up just a little bit. God, feels like I live in Saskatchewan or something. Anyway, we're pretty much at the end of this, and this could not have come out any better. And we are literally coming down the home stretch on this. Let it sanded out like butter. Like butter. I love 5-star clear. If you haven't tried it, probably worth a try. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching, of course.